Footage just come in of a shocking Russian strike on the city council office of Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv. I don't know what weapons it's using. Maybe it's this thermobaric bomb or something that they're warning us of, but it's massive. And that is the latest grim news from day 6 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But President Putin just cannot get those brave Ukrainians to surrender. In a second, I'll show you the kind of extraordinary heroes Ukraine has produced, the kind that drive past the Russian tank in their cars and casually lob a Molotov cocktail at it. But as the Russians lose tank after tank and thousands of its soldiers, the fear now is that Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is getting so desperate that it's going to get very brutal. The Russians have made some tiny gains in the past day. There are reports of Russian troops now walking around the southern city of Kherson. And American satellite pictures show a Russian column of tanks and armoured vehicles and transports stretching around 60 kilometres, moving in to cut off the capital Kyiv and maybe starve it into surrender. The Ukrainians report some other bad news today. 70 soldiers killed in an artillery strike outside Kharkiv, and Russia killing civilians in Kharkiv itself in what looks like a cluster munitions attack. Surely a war crime. Now, speaking of, the good news is that the world is now racing to the support of Ukraine, inspired or shamed by the heroism that they see there. Even Switzerland, famously neutral for 217 years, has now imposed sanctions on Russia. The International Football Federation has banned Russia from the World Cup. The European Union is sending Ukraine 70 warplanes for its pilots. And the International Criminal Court's prosecutor in The Hague says he's moving fast to investigate war crimes by Russia in Ukraine. And he says he's already satisfied they've been committed. The world is now rallying behind Ukraine, and we just got to pray it's not too late. And it's done that because, as I said last night, it has been both inspired and shamed to do what we can to help Ukraine beat Russia. Let me now give you another insight into the amazing courage of the Ukrainians, the kind of people who are inspiring it. I've already told you about the president, Volodymyr Zelensky, a hero who actually used to be a comedian of all things. But let me now show you the mayor of his capital, Kyiv, Vitali Klitschko, who in fact used to be a world champion boxer, along with his even more famous brother, Vladimir, who was not only the longest reigning heavyweight champion in history, but an Olympic gold medalist as well, and is now a volunteer soldier in Ukraine's territorial defense.
And we have chosen the direction where we want to go. We are a European country, and we want to make sure that our values are going to be implemented rightly into our society. And no one else is going to decide for us how we should live.
The two brothers are now appealing for world help. Listen to the mayor.
We must stay united against this aggression, against Russian aggression. Don't let it happen, continue happening in Ukraine. Don't let it happening in Europe and eventually in the world. United, we're strong. Support Ukraine.
Now, even inside Russia, opposition does seem to be growing to President Putin's war on Ukraine. Don't want to overstate it. He's still a very popular man there, nationalistic country. Don't want to overstate it. And also, of course, he's controlling the media. And you should know, too, that opposing Putin can even get you killed. We know a number of people who have suffered that fate. But even though that, despite all that, now one of his former foreign policy advisors has publicly said Putin's war has to stop. And anti-war protesters are prepared to risk arrest, like this grandmother. Can you believe it? In Putin's Russia, a grandmother like that gets arrested just for saying no to war. Can you believe that? Again, we can't exaggerate the anti-Putin sentiment. Still, you've also seen that the sanctions have made the ruble near worthless. A lot of Russia's foreign reserves are overseas, have been frozen. Companies like Apple have shut the Russian outlets. The stock market hasn't opened all this week because the shares, well, it has started stampede. they've lost value, maybe half their value. But there's no doubt that so far the Russian advance has gone horribly wrong for Russia. They may still win, but there are reports of Russian troops simply abandoning their trains, trucks, armoured vehicles, just surrendering, caught without food and fuel even. And Russian prisoners that have been put in front of the camera seem untrained, confused, demoralised, very young, some of them.
Они хоть... Они чё, блядь, вообще сказали-то нахуй, суки? Вообще же никому по-любому даже похоронка не пришла.
Обманули и хотят пустить как пушечное мясо.
Я не думал, что я еду убивать кого-то. Я не знал, я боялся отправлять на войну как пушечное мясо. Всех расстреливали сразу.
Я тебе могу сказать одно, то, что говорили нам, это все пиздёж. Мы здесь вот сидим сейчас, я и кто меня привез. Я могу сказать одно, я не понимаю, вот нахера все это было сказано, на то, что нам говорили там в России.
The Ukrainians are in fact trying to get through the Russian media blockade, trying to stop the news from their own people by getting these prisoners to ring their parents. It is in fact against the rules of war to use prisoners for propaganda, but Ukraine is fighting for its life. We now, though, have another amazing insight into the state of the Russian army in Ukraine. SHADOWBREAK is a British company whose main game is geospatial, using satellite imagery, and it's somehow managed to eavesdrop on communications between Russian troops in Ukraine, like this one. Joining me from Dubai is Samuel Cardillo, a young entrepreneur and founder of SHADOWBREAK. You would expect the modern army to have encrypted communications, secure lines, that someone like you couldn't just butt in and have a listen. What's gone wrong here?
Honestly, it's a great question. As you said, in 2022, you will imagine that the Russian army has equipments, encrypted communication, because it's the standard for a modern army. And we hope that not the whole Russian army is talking on open comms, and it's some very specific units that are in. But I think it's mainly a logistical issue that those units were sent on the ground without the proper equipment.
And what are you actually hearing on these recordings?
We are hearing literally everything. I mean, we've heard them talking about what they're going to do after they wake up. We've heard them having, jokes. We've heard them crying during fights. And then we've heard them having fuel issue, lacking coordinates. There was an instance where they were trying to communicate with another unit to exchange fuel and food, but they could not tell them where they were because they didn't have a map. So yeah, we've heard like an entire range of things.
Watching US President Joe Biden today, I felt sick. The free world is threatened by Russia, by China too, and is crying out for a strong leader. A Churchill, a Thatcher, a Reagan, an Eisenhower, someone like that. But today, US President Joe Biden stepped up for his big moment, the annual State of the Union address, in front of all the politicians, all the Supreme Court judges, all his top military, the might of America. And dear God. Now, it's true, I don't like Biden, I don't trust him, I think he's weak, but the threats today are so great, Ukraine in particular. I really wanted him to succeed. We all need that. But instead of strength, we got the stumbles of a feeble man. And not just, signs of decaying intellect, stumbles, silly ones like this.
You can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases.
Even in the biggest moments, that big rah-rah for the Ukrainians that we're desperate for, Biden even called them Iranians instead.
Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people.
Now, I did like some of the sentiments, of course, like this.
He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
But what did Joe Biden today actually offer Ukraine on top of the sanctions so far? Very little. Yes, United States airspace is now going to be closed to Russian planes, and more oligarchs are going to be targeted. But none of that's going to stop Russia from smashing Kyiv, killing its president, and then subjecting Ukraine to a rule by tyranny. There's no mention, for instance, of the agonizing option of closing Ukrainian airspace, the US and NATO, which is the one thing that would help. It would save Ukraine from Russian bombing for a start, and from it dropping paratroopers, as it's now doing around some cities. And Ukraine is begging for this. The president again today, close this airspace, help us like that. Look, I get it. You know, people are suggesting this option far too lightly. As if it's no big deal for the US and the European allies to shoot down Russian jets themselves, and very likely risk starting World War III with catastrophic losses. That's too easy to suggest. But we also have to debate, has World War III started already? If Putin takes Ukraine, who's next? And look at China. If we let Putin take Ukraine, even at this great cost, will China think that's still a green light for it to invade Taiwan? Who's going to stop China if it couldn't even stop Russia?